So it's the tension that Scrooge is under is pressed further by showing he feels a chilling influence, and there's death cold eyes upon him, which actually shows how obviously intense the look from Marley is, and obviously the word death refers or indicates that he's a creature from another world. And so then Scrooge, obviously still trying to be firm there, he says, "What do you want with me?" And he says, "Much." And then yeah, they kind of talk through that, and obviously he affirms that he's Jacob Marley. Not much going on there. And then it's just kind of a little calmer here, just so we can set it up again, perhaps, so it doesn't become too overbearing for the reader, etc. Scrooge asks the question, etc., and the ghost sits down, and then the ghost says, "You don't believe in me," and Scrooge again tries to affirm that he doesn't, still trying to keep the way he is, trying not to let anything change him. And he says, "What evidence do you have of me beyond the reality of that of your senses?" And that's really important, because obviously, perhaps if you wanted, you could stretch it to a point where you could say that Scrooge has always been numb to his senses in a way. He sees poverty every day, and he hears the cries of those who need, and he chooses not to feel for them, and chooses not to actually pay any attention to those senses either. So it's kind of in a way that Scrooge has got a death of his senses in a way where he kind of ignores it for his mindset. He only wants to care about himself. So even here, if he's confronted by paranormal activity as well as normal activity, he ignores that as well. So it's not the first time he's not looking at the evidence around him from his senses. And he says, "Why do you doubt them?" And then Scrooge obviously tries to be rational about it and says, "Because you could be anything, you could be this, very practical in his ideas here." And then he makes a joke at the end. He said, "There's more gravy, like I could have just a bad meal, than there is something grave about you, whatever you are." So he's very dismissive, and it says here he's not actually into cracking jokes, but he was doing it in a way to actually keep his own terror down. So that shows us again how scared he is. And this line's very important, because it says, "The spectre's voice alone disturbed the very marrow in his bones." Obviously we can look at that, obviously, when people, there's that kind of old cliched phrase, if you want to change, you got to change from the inside. Then obviously here we've got the deepest of the inside, not just changing mentally, not just changing physically from the inside. This is the very marrow of his bones that we're going to change. So obviously this is and obviously the point being made here, that it's actually striking him really, really deep. We're moving on then. So the Spectre sits down, and then they have a little bit more of a conversation. And then Scrooge again is still sticking to his gun, says, I'm not going to believe in it. And again, he goes with his catchphrase, "Humbug, I tell you, humbug." And again, the exclamation marks and the short sentences there really stress it. And then the spirit cries out again, and then it's reinforced how terrible it is by this dismal and appalling noise. The two descriptions there are striking it home. And then Scrooge has to hold on tight to his chair to save himself from falling in a swoon. Again, showing how physically he affected is by this. But how much greater was his horror when and then the jaw drops on the floor, and then Scrooge falls upon his knees and clasps his hands before his face. Now, both of those are really interesting, because they're very weak positions. Falling upon your knees obviously is a sign of kind of repentance, or begging for mercy, and clasping his hands before his face is like a very childlike, you need to be protected, or you want to protect yourself. And that's quite interesting, obviously, because Scrooge is probably never been in this position before as an adult. Because of he's always in control. He's always kind of bossing other people out. He's always making other people feel small and want to take refuge from him. So this is a very novel position that Dickens tells us that he's in. Just trying to make it clear to us that things are again changing for him in his status as well. As well as his fear levels. So he begs for mercy. He says, "Why do you trouble me?" He says, "Now do you believe in me?" And he says, "I do." But then he actually tries to understand why he's actually here. And the ghost actually explains that part of his punishment, if you will, is that the spirits are doomed to wander the world. Woe is me. And one of his punishments is that he has to look upon things that he cannot share in, and he sees things that would have made him that he would love to have been happy with, but he can't actually join in them as one of his punishments. And the Spectre's not really happy about that. And obviously what's being told to us here is one of the punishments for those who don't do good. It's kind of reminding us of the value of actually helping other people and kind of giving us an idea of the afterlife. I'm not sure exactly how literally Christian that view is, forgive me, but he was writing to a Christian audience, and there was there is a firm belief in the afterlife, and obviously a punishment after. And obviously Marley's coming back here saying that he is being punished in an afterlife. And he says, why are you chained? And he says, I'm changed because this is the chain I made for myself in life. I made every single little bit of it. And obviously we know from the links that Scrooge and Marley had, that Scrooge, if he were to die and come at this very moment, he would look exactly the same, because obviously he's exactly the same. He's in exactly the same. He's gone through exactly the same kind of moves and rituals and business maneuvers, etc., and attitudes towards people, and that's what leads the ghost to actually ask: is this pattern strange to you? And obviously, the pattern there is quite an interesting, because obviously quite an interesting choice of words, because it's just kind of like something easy to follow, something he should be able to recognise, something kind of unique and modelled in that way that Scrooge again would be able to see, and it obviously has a huge effect on Scrooge, and he trembles again more and more. Or would you know the weight and length of coil you bear yourself? It was full and heavy as this 7 Christmas Eves ago. You have laboured since. It is a ponderous chain. So he's saying, what's to come for you, Scrooge, is actually going to be even worse, and very intimidating, as it's a ponderous chain. And again, it's kind of it's reinforced by how heavy and how long this is, by the weight and length, etc. And again, it's called full and heavy as well. So we know that it's going to be quite a burden on him. Scrooge glanced about the floor, with the expectation of finding himself surrounded by some 50 or 60 fathoms of iron cable, but he could see nothing. Jacob, tell me, speak some comfort. And he says, I have none to give. It comes from other regions and is conveyed by other ministers, the kinds of men, nor can I tell you, and he says, I cannot stay, I cannot linger any while, so he's just come to give me this message. My spirit never walked beyond our counting house mark me. In life, my spirit never roved between the narrow streets of the money-changing hole, and weary journeys lie before me. So he's saying in life, he actually never went anywhere beyond their actual office and what they actually used to do there in their office. He never kind of experienced life and experienced a lot of things in life. And now, kind of one of his punishments is actually he goes through seeing the things that could make him happy, but that he doesn't actually get involved with it anyway. It was a habit with Scrooge whenever became thoughtful to put his hands in the breech of his pocket, pondering what the ghost had said. You must have been very slow about it. And again, it's a very strange, and it's just a lightening of the mood again. You notice that Dickens is punctuating this with a little light along the way, so the audience doesn't feel too heavy for the audience. And if you remember the preface at the beginning, where he actually says, I don't want you to get out of humour with me or the season or this, that, or the other, then we can kind of understand why.